This is a general overview looking into fraud, the different points that constitute what fraud is, and I want to show you how you can use AI as a tool, and which AI I use specifically, as a tool to expose the legal name fraud. So I've just found this website called Investopedia. We're going to be looking at some of the definitions and types of fraud to get a reasonable grasp of what it is and an understanding that it's actually a lot more common. It's a lot more commonplace than you may first believe. Fraud is everywhere. And if you want to go into some deeper, darker theories than just fraud in the legal name, there are some theories that even our very presence and existence on this world was fraudulent, but I'll save that for another video. Here is a definition of fraud. It occurs when an entity such as a person or institution intentionally deceives others for financial or personal gain. Fraud is an intentional act of deceit, so there's always deception there. It's not fraud if there's no deception. Designed to reward the perpetrator or to deny the rights of a victim. So fraud involves deceit with the intention to illegally or unethically gain at the expense of another. An act of intentional deception designed to exploit a victim. Any fraud involves falsification, either by withholding important information, lying or faking documents. Often, the perpetrator of fraud knows something that the intended victim doesn't know. I'm not even sure if you could say often. I think it's always the perpetrator of fraud knows something that the victim doesn't know. At heart, the individual or company committing fraud is taking advantage of information asymmetry. And I was like, what is that? And I love it though. I love it because that's always what it is. Fraud is where one person knows or has access to information that if the victim or the other party had access to, would change their decision. They would not enter the contract or do whatever the thing is that they're meaning to do, that the deceiver, the perpetrator of the fraud, is wanting them to do. It's a discrepancy of information. One party knows more and isn't disclosing that information to the other party, which forces them to act in a detrimental manner. And I'll give some more examples soon, and we'll also get to how this comes into the legal name. The victim cannot or does not try to verify the false information. Well, it's because they're believed to be true information, which is understandable in many cases, or they just cannot verify the false information until after the fact. So this is DuckDuckGo, and I'm using a chatbot called Mistral 3, because you can go here, new chat, and you can choose ChatGPT if you'd like, or there's a few others. I tend to use this one because it says it's open source and with low moderation, low censorship. I'd like to find a better AI that is totally open source, offline would be even better, and is my personal private AI, LLM, large language model, that is no censorship. That is ideally what I'd like, but this is what I'm using at the time being because I've tried to do it in the past and it's a bloody pain in the ass. And at least this way with DuckDuckGo, all these chats are my own. I can clear them at any time and it's not OpenAI or any other company's information to use. It's all private. Oh, that's what it says with DuckDuckGo, and I like being able to click and use the different bots. But I've mainly just been using Mistral recently. I've asked Mistral to give me some points and examples about fraud. Essentially with the 9 points that constitute fraud, but then it's just given me some extra ones as well with a different example for each of these. So we'll go through just to get a better grasp of what fraud is. This is helpful for me too, and I hope it's helpful for you. So misrepresentation. That's always a characteristic of fraud. Example, a car salesperson falsely claims that a used car has a clean title and no history of accidents. Could be someone on Facebook Marketplace or Gumtree, car sales. In reality, the car has been in multiple accidents and has a salvage title. There must be some American term. 2. Intent to deceive. A telemarketer intentionally lies about the benefits of fake investment opportunity. You're going to get 10 times your return on this investment if you put your money in, knowing that the victims will lose money. So it's an intent to deceive. 3. Justifiable reliance. Example, a home buyer relies on the seller's representation that the property has no structural issues, only to discover later that the foundation is severely damaged. And in that case, it would be that the seller has said, no, I've got a surveyor to come in, here's the ticket, and the foundation is fine. But then they move in, they buy the house, pass the money over, and they find out, no, that was a lie. And so they were justifiably relying upon the honesty and the document that the structure was sound, but it's not. So they were deceived, and they justifiably relied upon the perpetrator of the fraud's testimony of speaking truth, which they weren't. 4. Materiality. A job applicant is told that the position comes with a guaranteed salary increase after 1 year, which is a material fact that would influence the applicant's decision to accept the job. So this is the first time I'm actually reading this as well, so I'm thinking about that. Yeah, and then if their salary didn't go up, well, they were just deceived. So materiality is like the facts of the matter, not people's interpretations. 5. Damages or injury. A consumer buys a defective product based on false advertising claims, resulting in financial loss or potential injury. You buy a kettle and it blows up. Bloody hell. Well, that's not really fraud, that's just some other kind of injury. Yeah, it depends on the context of what the actual claim was. If you bought a shaver for your face and it said it's never going to cut you, but then it cuts you and the seller knew it was going to cut you, there you go, now it's fraud. So this word, I've never heard this before, but it's pronounced scienter. Scienter. Knowledge that one's actions are wrong or contrary to law, where such knowledge is an element of a criminal offence or basis for liability. Knowledge of one's acts, knowingly, willfully. A pharmaceutical company knows that a drug has serious side effects, but markets it as safe and effective. We all know what's happening there. Withholding this critical information from consumers and healthcare providers. And this is why it's so important to learn about fraud, because you'll see it everywhere. Once you understand all these points, you go, oh my goodness, what isn't a fraud in the Matrix-approved mainstream agendas? Like, what isn't fraudulent? I don't know. Really have to think about that. Next, 7, causation. Example, a patient suffers severe health issues due to taking a medication that was falsely marketed as safe. We know what's happening here. Directly causing injuries or death. False pretenses. A scammer poses as a government official and demands payment for a non-existent fine, using the false pretense of legal authority to induce compliance. Or it could just be the police officer or the court or whoever. They say, oh, we are a legitimate authority and you must pay us. Not that we have any objective right to do so, but it's the same thing. It's a false pretense that you are a person, you're the legal name and you must comply, which we'll get into shortly. Concealment. A landlord conceals known issues with the property, such as mold or pest infestations, to rent it out to unsuspecting tenants. Or selling a car, you know that the engine's about to blow up, but you conceal that. You're hiding things. You're not giving full disclosure. So it makes contracts null and void when you do that, because it is fraud. And this is basically a continuation from my video where I had 9 or so points for what constitutes an ethical contract. So yeah, I've been meaning to make this video for a while. This video and that video pair together for contracts and fraud. Bait and switch. So they're basically the 9 elements or characteristics, aspects of fraud, those ones. And this just seems to be some extra stuff here, or different types of fraud, which is, well, some of these could be debatable actually when you think about it. A bait and switch. No, that's not fraud. So no point of talking about that. False advertising could be fraudulent, yes. A bait and switch can be annoying, but there can be good case scenarios for that as well. Pyramid schemes, phishing, insurance fraud, credit card fraud, healthcare fraud, real estate fraud, investment fraud, charity fraud. Okay, that's enough. We've got a lot of examples here, different types of fraud. So on my left, I have the government's rebuttal of each of the fraudulent points about the legal name. So actually how I got here was by asking this ChatGPT, Mistral, this AI chatbot, which is free to use. I asked it to pretend from the perspective of a sovereign citizen and assume that a sovereign citizen's arguments about legal names, and obviously I'm not a sovereign citizen, you're not a sovereign citizen, we know that's an oxymoron, blah, 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 but to the AI, it's going to understand all the arguments behind the concept of sovereign citizen. So we have to use something like that. Now you're basically like tricking the AI to work in your favor. At first I asked it to give the sovereign citizens points, and then I said, okay, give a rebuttal from the government's point of view, and that's all this side. And then I said, okay, use a sovereign citizen to rebut the government's rebuttal, and that's on this side. And that's what we'll go through one at a time like that. So misrepresentation about the legal name. And this is just about the legal name. That's all. There could be so many other things that you use this for. Misrepresentation. So the government here is saying that they do not misrepresent legal names and entities. Legal names are used to identify individuals in official capacities, and entities are distinct legal constructs with clear definitions and purposes. The distinction between a natural person and a legal entity is well documented in legal texts and administrative procedures. Because that's basically what any government or judge or court that is on the side of the bad guys would say. They'd use this kind of argument to defend themselves. And really, it all depends on which side you're on. If you're on their side and you've never been a victim of the fraud, you'd be like, oh, well, it's true. It is well documented. You can read and you can figure this out. And because people don't, it's their own fault, right? But when you're on our side and you're a victim of it, you see things very differently. And I'd argue we see things objectively. Because here's the rebuttal. The government's claim that legal names and entities are clearly defined is misleading. In practice, individuals are often treated as if their legal name is synonymous with their natural person, meaning the living man or woman. That's the closest the law, inverted commas, and the government get to calling a living man or living being or spiritual being or whatever. They call it a natural person, leading to confusion and misidentification. The government's use of legal names in official documents and interactions reinforces this misinterpretation. I read that and I said to it, I don't think you've done it right. For example, in point 1, I would rebut the government by saying that it may be clear to people who have studied law for 30 years, but it's not to the people who haven't, which is 99% of everyone else. And they are getting coerced. They are coerced into getting a legal name at birth. You get me? And so it said it understood that, and it rewrote this part a little bit better. Most individuals do not have the legal training to understand these distinctions. They're clearly defined in legal tests. This clarity is not accessible to the average person. And to add a little bit of sarcasm and humor in it, it's like if you go from the bad guy's point of view, they're like, come on, you fuckhead, it's your fault. You don't know. We have this book here, and we tell you how we screw you over. You just got to read it for 30 years, and you'd know how we mess you up. Like, you're the idiot for not reading this book. The book is right there. And if you choose not to read that book over 30 years, you're the fuckwit who got tricked into acting as a legal name. We told you. We told you it's all in our legal documents. We've got the millions, literal millions of laws, all on the public websites, easily accessible for you to study and learn. But you're the fucking idiot who didn't do that. It's like, ugh. I don't like to swear too much in my videos, but sometimes it's just necessary. So, it's just, you can't argue that. You can't argue from their point of view, the government's point of view. Because it's just unreasonable. It's literally unreasonable to expect people to understand this complex legal jargon. It doesn't matter that it's well defined and it is your legal text and administrative procedures. I could say to them, hey, if I'm in a position of power somehow and I fuck them over, hey, I've got this whole book. And I know you haven't read it, but you can read it. I know it'll take you 30 years, because it took me 30 years to write, or maybe longer, and it's going to take you 30 years to study. Just throwing 30 years out there. It might be 10 years, it might be 50 years. Some people study law for 50 years and they still have no idea how any of this works. 5 years, not even 5 years. I don't think you can understand this stuff that well. I mean, I've been studying this stuff for 5-6 years and I understand it enough, but I know there is still so much I don't get. I just know enough to know that it is fucking wrong. And if it's taken me this long to get to that point, if it takes another 5 years to realize, oh, hold on, it's actually right. Well, you can't get to that point because it's too complex. If it takes 10 years to understand that it's right, you're doing something wrong. And it's not true. Reality doesn't work like that in any realm. Number 2, intent to deceive. The government's point of view. There is no evidence to suggest that the government intentionally deceives individuals. Legal and administrative processes are designed to be transparent. You know, that is something they'd say, but that is nonsense. And accessible. Any confusion arises from a lack of understanding of legal terminology and procedures, not from intentional deception. Have you ever tried to read their legislation? It is literally the most complex thing in the world. Even medical jargon of bones and biology and DNA and physics and quantum physics and philosophy is much more simple. And I've looked into all of those. The legal side of everything is the most complex I've ever come across. Nothing is more complex that I've ever come across. The hardest thing to understand in the world, and it shouldn't be, because I've made law, objective morality. It's one of the simplest things in the world to understand. Idiots can understand it. Live by the golden rule of equity. Cause no harm, create no loss, etc. Basic shit. So here's the sovereign citizen's rebuttal from an AI chatbot. The complexity of legal language and procedures is not an accident but a deliberate barrier designed to maintain control. The government's failure to provide clear, accessible information about the distinction between natural persons and legal entities suggests an intent to deceive and maintain power over individuals. I agree with that. Justifiable reliance. Individuals, from the government's point of view, individuals have access to legal resources and educational materials that explain the nature of legal names and entities. Reliance on government-issued documents without seeking further clarification is not justifiable. Individuals are responsible for understanding their legal status and obligations. And the rebuttal here, individuals reasonably rely on government-issued documents as accurate representations of their identity and legal status. The government issues these documents without clear disclaimers or explanations. When did they ever tell you that this birth certificate is a legal name, not you? That it's the recording of an event, not of an identity, making it justifiable for individuals to rely on them without seeking further clarification. And the government, even though it's obvious to most of us, but it pretends to be this entity, this group of people who are here to help you, that they misrepresent everything about themselves. They're a parasite, they're a mosquito that tricks you into believing it needs to suck your blood and it's for your benefit. There is no actual benefit, there is only negatives ever, always, forever, ever. Nothing good ever comes from them. Nothing. But they pretend and they trick people into thinking that they are this necessary evil. And some people even think they're a necessary good. That's how far they've been deceived. And so people justifiably rely upon the government. And they think, well, they would tell the truth, wouldn't they? They're meant to be the good guys because that's what they say they are. That's how they pretend to act. They say they are here to help you. They don't say deliberately all the time they are here to kill you and harm you. They say that we're here to help you. This is safe. This is for your best interest. We care about you. We want to make things better. That's what they say. So people have justifiable reliance on the government's word about the legal name and the birth certificates and all their documents, that they'd be telling the truth and they wouldn't leave anything out. Because if there was something important to share, people justifiably believe that the government would tell them. Materiality. Government's point of view. The distinction between legal names and entities is not a hidden fact. It is a well-known legal principle to all those people who have studied the law for decades or millennia. Oh, maybe not. Oh, I don't know. How long has common law been around for and all those other laws? A long bloody time. That individuals can learn about through legal education, consultation with legal professionals. How many legal professionals actually know this? How many lawyers would know the separation and distinction of the legal name and that all legislation is written only for persons, never once mentions men or women? Persons, males and females, animals, not men and women, living beings. It's got nothing to do with that. I'd say less than 1%, though that's an educated guess, of lawyers and other legal professionals would actually understand it. Even a little bit. The materiality of this distinction is not concealed. If you do look hard enough, you can find it. They do tell you about legal fictions and whatnot, but you have to really look very hard and you have to put so many pieces of the puzzle together. Obviously I figured it out and you have probably figured it out and some other people as well, but as a percentage of the population, very, very few people can figure this out. Even the people who study this stuff and work in that legal world for a living don't figure it out because it is so convoluted and complex and deliberately concealed upon layer and layer and layer and layer of different jargon. Just think of all the different names for laws. There's rules, there's orders, there's mandates, there's statutes, legislation, acts, policy. It just keeps on going on. Why have all these different names, bylaws? It's just to confuse people. You don't need all that nonsense. Some of them are good, but 80% is not. Just in those names. If you're looking at legality, it's probably 5% is actually useful. The other 95% is crap. Not all of it is crap. There's some good elements. Yes, I admit that. Materiality. Okay, the rebuttal. The materiality of the distinction between legal names and entities, because that's like a material fact that there's a distinction, is not widely known or understood by the general public. Go do a survey and ask people on the street, are you aware of your legal name, the distinction between your legal name and you? Are you aware that on your credit card, your driver's license, your passport, your birth certificate, the name that is on there is not your name? Are you seeing that? Are you aware of that? Most people are going to have no idea. The government's failure to educate individuals about this distinction means that it is not a well-known legal principle for most people, and its materiality is concealed. Okay, damages or injury. Government. Any financial loss or legal consequences are the result of individuals' actions and decisions. So when you pay fines and tax, well, you chose to do that. You chose to identify as a taxpayer and as a person, and you decided to open one of our companies and be obligated and to change your status to some kind of status which has particular liabilities and obligations to other corporations. You decided to act as a corporation working for other corporations. So that's your fault, isn't it? Individuals are responsible for managing their legal and financial affairs and understanding the implications of their actions. It's true, people are responsible for learning this stuff, doesn't excuse or change the fact that it is fraudulent, deceptive, and evil to do this in the first place. Doesn't change that, even if people are responsible and they should be learning this stuff, they haven't. But it's still wrong. The government's claim that individuals are responsible for their own actions and decisions overlooks the fact that individuals are often unaware of the true nature of legal names and entities. The harm suffered by individuals, including financial loss, paying for all tax, which is not necessary, speeding fines, parking fines, rates, whatever else, all those fines and taxes and GST, which they don't need to do and shouldn't be doing. That's just the parasites do bidding. The harm suffered, loss, blah, 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 blah. It's all due to a misrepresentation and failure to provide clear information. So all this damage is coming from by the fraud perpetrated by the government and all its employees and staff. Scienter. Okay, here we are. The government does not have a secret agenda to mislead individuals. Legal and administrative processes are based on established laws and regulations, which are publicly available. The government's actions are guided by these laws, not by a desire to deceive. So it doesn't matter. This doesn't mean anything here to say legal and administrative processes are based on established laws and regulations. If I had established a law or a regulation that I can beat you over the head and steal your stuff whenever I want, and I have legal processes or just administrative processes based on the law which said I can beat you over the head and steal your stuff, well, that means nothing. It doesn't mean it's right. That's not an argument, but that is what they would say. They'd say that. Oh, these are just well-established laws, regulations, and policies, administrative processes. That means nothing at all. Filler words, which are publicly available. Oh, it's also publicly available. You can learn how we decided everything which is subjective and not objective. So Scienter, the government's knowledge of the true nature of legal names and entities, combined with its failure to communicate this information, clearly suggests Scienter. And so they say, oh, it's all publicly available. We have told you. But yet, why does no one know about it? If they're saying, we have told you, but no one knows about it, then they haven't told anyone. Because otherwise, everyone would know it. So they do have Scienter here. They do know what they're doing is wrong because they know that no one knows what's happening. They know that no one knows, or 99% of people don't know what's happening. Because whenever they say Mr. Last Name, come up to the bench, and 99% of people don't rebut that assumption, they know that that person doesn't know about the fallacy of the legal name. You know, I've spoken about this many times. The last time I went into court, Mr. Bartolo, yes, hi there, magistrate, I'm not a Mr. My name's James the Traveller, I'm here representing that legal name, and he, just asked me again a couple of times. I've explained this in other videos, and he kicked me out, and that was the end of the story. So I didn't identify with a legal name. I didn't identify as the legal name. Sure, I have a legal name, but it's not me. It's two totally different things. The government is aware of the potential for confusion. Even just the potential. Of course, there's a potential. You can't deny that there is a potential for confusion and harm, but they choose not to address it, indicating a deliberate intent to mislead. So AI can be very useful when you use it like this, see? Causation. Harm suffered by individuals is not directly caused by government misrepresentation, but by their own actions and decisions. Yeah, it is, because all the people, they chose not to study for 30 years. They chose to trust us. They should have known we were lying. They should have known we made it so complex and so difficult to grasp. You have to be super intelligent to figure out. They should have known this. They should have known they should become more intelligent. They should have figured this out. That's their own fault. And in a way, you can say that, but you're not right when you say that. You can say it, and I agree with it too, but it's not right. It's objectively wrong. Because, I figured it out. Other people should have the capacity to figure out, but they're not expected to figure it out because it's so complex. and they're trusting people who have misrepresented themselves as good guys, but they're bad guys. So, yes, the government actually is the cause of the harm here. Here's the AI response. It is caused by the government's misrepresentation. Just basically what I said. False pretenses. The government does not use false pretenses to induce compliance. You better get this needly stiddly thing in your arm, otherwise you are not going to have a job anymore. You won't be able to travel. You won't be able to do anything. We are not using false pretenses to induce compliance. No. That's a different topic, but anyway. Legal obligations and liabilities are clearly defined in laws and regulations. It is clearly defined, isn't it? Yeah, sure, okay. Yeah, let's just all be in fairyland and pretend that's true. Okay, sure. Individuals are expected to comply with these obligations based on their understanding of the law. Their rebuttal: the government's use of legal names and entities in official documents and interactions is a false pretense that induces individuals to comply with legal obligations and liabilities, which they are not actually held accountable. They're not obliged or liable for those. The government's failure to clearly communicate the distinction reinforces this, leading individuals to believe they are the same. I mean, some of this seems a bit repetitive. It's like the same thing again and again. It's just all the intent to deceive and the complexity of it. But anyway, the government does not conceal the true nature of legal names and entities. Legal information is publicly available, apparently, and individuals have the means to access and understand it. Any concealment is due to individuals' lack of effort to seek out this information. The government's claim that legal information is publicly available overlooks the fact that this information is buried in complex legal language and procedures. The government's failure to provide clear, accessible information about the distinction is a form of concealment designed to maintain the deception and control over individuals. So, this is just a very brief overview of the fraud perpetrated by the government and the cabal behind them, as the government are just all sock puppets. Little sock hand puppets, or maybe even a finger puppet smaller than a whole hand. They don't deserve that. They're just one little finger puppet controlled by a force behind the scenes. And so I hoped this information helped rectify that informational asymmetry. It's a cool word. And you could use this tool to help you figure things out. It's just the ability to do more. You can think more, you can do more. Obviously, you have to think. People totally get the wrong idea about AI, and that is silly. Don't be afraid of it. Use it as your tool. Like, you shouldn't be afraid of hammers or hunting rifles or cars or the internet. Don't be afraid of AI. It is not a threat. People are the threat. People who use the tools in malevolent, fraudulent ways. That's what the real threat is. Okay. Alright, bye-bye.